What is the theologian, the pastor, the Christian called to in America today? What is our task, our responsibility, our role at this moment in time? Welcome, everyone, to this new YouTube exclusive series, distinct from the Spiritually Incorrect podcast, which I also do, so, go check that out as well. But here I am now with you today. I'm your host, JD Lionheart, here with Dr. Jordan Daniel Wood. Jordan holds a PhD from Boston College. He's an assistant professor of theology at Belmont University, the author of The Whole Mystery of Christ as well, which you might have read or heard of. It's kind of a big deal, annoyingly so. Jordan, thanks for coming back on the show after we attacked your Universalism a few months ago. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Yeah. Since you guys failed so miserably at that, I was heartened to come back and take some more.
I know. I appreciate that. So, and I'm glad that's why you're coming back. So I just, for competitive reasons, that's good. But
exactly. That's how we are in Christianity.
That's it. Self and other. I mean,
yeah.
Unless there's an absolute oneness at the heart of all existence, how could we be anything but violent competitors?
Exactly. Yeah. Here I'm just basically an adherent to the Enuma Elish.
Yeah, there we go. So
humanity came from a dead god. So,
well, awesome. Well, thanks for being here. I think this is gonna be less question and answer kind of thing, because I don't know if either of us feels like we have answers, or maybe you do. Maybe you can solve this for me.
Probably not.
But what does it feel like to be a theologian in America right now? Like, what's going on in us, in our heads and hearts and prayers, like right now? Like, what is that? Because I just feel done. You go first, though.
Oh boy. Well, I think I also feel done. Just having a conversation with my wife this morning to that effect. I'm just like, so I mean, here's where I'm at. I mean, I think that in so many different ways, from so many different angles, we are constantly tempted into thinking that having conviction is basically like a almost inherently cynical role-playing thing. Like, there are lots of reasons to, like, I think one thing about our generation, and I don't know if it's totally true across the board or whatever, but there's kind of been a lot of, like, ironic distance and kind of self-deprecation, and a lot of times that's good. Like, there's a lot of, like, good to that. There's a sort of humbling effect to it, a sort of don't take yourself so seriously, and, like, all of that's good. I mean, in day-to-day life. And certainly you can't really get by as a parent without something like that. I mean,
yeah. Like, there's feces somewhere. I can smell it. I don't know where it is, but it's somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, just, it's you get practice at, like, your kids are going to say stuff. They don't really know what they mean. They know it's something bad, but they don't mean it. Anyway, you got to have a buffer kind of up, right? And so when certain things that I think, even if you draw the line in theory, are red lines, like, if this happens, okay, then I need to, like, do something. Or if this happens, I'm going to say something. Or I just can't avoid this anymore. You can't take that kind of ironic distance without, in some sense, being complicit. But then what happens is, as soon as I try to react, this is just me speaking personally, if I try to react to that, then there's a second guessing of, like, well, I don't know, am I just sort of buying into this or that? And the really pernicious thing about the narratives of carving the world up simply in terms of right and left, the woke, the anti-woke, or whatever, is then you can't really play any role without feeling like you're just reciting a script. And so it seems like it makes authenticity and authentic engagement in the social and political, and especially from our perspective, where we're also adding, like, religious conviction, it feels like it makes that almost doomed to be ironic in the worst way. Like, oh, what are you out for? Like, the first thing I think of if I see somebody speaking out about something, what are you trying to get? What's your bit? What's your what's your like thing here? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to start a new this or that? Yeah, I know. It's just like but that's so pernicious because it means meaningful engagement's almost impossible by definition. But I think lines are, at least in my opinion, lines are being crossed so often now, and they're so grave that I don't know what else to do but just sort of take that risk.
Yeah. Well, and I definitely get that reaction every time I see someone post or I post. Everyone's like, "Okay, seriously, this guy's bringing in these assumptions, and they must be listening to this news source." And it's like, well, yeah, everyone's coming from some place,
Right.
but the thing that I find really interesting is I think of the kind of epitome of that cynical distance as South Park. Like the classic,
Yes.
we're just going to critique everyone and not take a side because we're taking the piss out of everyone. And even South Park is now like, okay, everyone. Like it's almost inverted in on itself where if we're really going to take the piss out of everyone, we also need to take a piss out of those people who think they're above all of this. That
Yeah,
there's some third way where you can just not take a stance and stand
exactly.
back. And South Park is recognizing that doesn't exist, and those people are just as ridiculous as everyone else. So now we're just going to make fun of what's happening in America and with our government. Hey, Satan! Like it's just, so I think I don't know if that's going to actually affect anyone, but I wonder if there are people watching that going, like, these people who are, for me, the barometer of that distance, even they
Mm,
cannot stay back. Like, they feel called to step into the fray.
hmm.
What's going on?
Right, and there's kind of like I like what so I've had for a while now wanted to write something somewhere, but you know how that goes. Called like beyondism, and that's kind of what I feel like it's another, I think maybe perhaps a unique temptation, if I could put it that way, for people like us that are like we're trying to be educators to the best of our ability. We're in the religious realm, philosophical realm, that inevitably people associate that with ethics, and then what's your political persuasion. And so I also see that reaction that you're naming, that instead of going the South Park way and actually being like, okay, hold on, we can't just both sides it all the time. There is a kind of temptation to do that, but to drape that in piety, right? Like in piety, not impiety, but in the garb of piety, right? Like, like I often hear this from certain people, even people that were like Trump adjacent for the last 2 or 3 times he's run, like have been like, well, um, both sides are bad. And, I can see that temptation to say, I'm going to retreat in my sort of quietistic, pseudo mystic beyondism, where the mark of my kind of my sort of link to the transcendent is precisely the degree to which I prescend from anything at all in the world. And I might even do that with a kind of mystique, and perhaps I'll quote, Saint Paisios of Athens or whatever, and I'll look like I'm sort of beyond it all. And it's like, look, I got a beard too. I could do that, like I understand how that
Yeah.
works. Like I'm a history guy. I quote, old dead guys and stuff. It's like, but then I do think the side of me that I'm really grateful to God for in this moment, because it is good to think about what I'm grateful for, is like I'm a parent, and I just can't do that. I cannot sit here and act like nothing is wrong or I'm above that. No, I'm not. I'm in this world. Things are happening that are wrong. It actually is a problem, just to throw an example out there for finally. I mean, it actually is a problem that those who were like sort of the most QAnon adjacent, and I'm going to be a conspiracy theorist person now, when presented with the most plausible and obvious conspiracy theory in the world with Epstein. Now, some of them, to their credit, are actually saying, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's BS, or not getting that. But it's like, look, but this is, to me, this is like that's an obvious example, but it's also horrific. I mean, look, I got 4 daughters.
Yeah.
I actually don't want to live in a country where we protect people who have systematically preyed on girls and could do that because they're rich and powerful. I think that's a betrayal of humanity, and it's a betrayal of Christ. And I want my kids to know that, because it's also a function of my love for them.
Yeah, you're tethered to the here and now by these sacks of flesh. These, like, yeah, I mean, you got 4 of them, and I got 2. Like, you can't just fly away into your ethereal kingdoms and pretend, that the kingdom of heaven has nothing to do with here and now. Um, totally. I I remember a Christology, Doctrine of Christ class at Ozark Christian College. There was this really annoying guy who talked about the kingdom of God starting really small here and now, and then expanding bigger and bigger and bigger. He was an idiot. He didn't know what he was talking about.
I know. I kind of remember that guy too.
Yeah.
He stinks. He stunk too. I don't know.
I mean, the audience has probably figured out that it's you. But I think, I mean, so many people have that kingdom of heaven, like it's later, right? Like heaven comes later, and it doesn't begin now. And if it begins now, it only begins in a personal, spiritual way that's, America, church, and state. It's inherently private. Right. And personal. It doesn't have anything to do with the social, the economic, the political. And so, like, I see some people I really respect on Facebook and social media and all of these things posting about how, they're taking social media breaks, or the church's role is not to take a stand on earthly things, but to be a constant spiritual place of rest and sanity amidst the political instability. And like, there's some truth in that. But then I wonder if that's just an excuse to just abandon the duty that we're called to here and now, which is to impact these subjects, to be here for the refugee and the immigrant. And like, I don't know. Anyways, I'm just ranting now.
No. I mean, that's, I mean, yeah, it's, I mean, the how to put this? I think that, like, the other thing about this, and actually I wanted to put this back to you in a second, like, it's also kind of hypocritical. Like, it's cheap, right? Because some of the same people that take that posture actually make very obvious exceptions. Like, did you do that with abortion and pro-life? What was it? Was it all of a sudden like, oh, I don't want to be political here, or it used to be like when conservatives cared about the Bill of Rights, that like, that would be something that's worth engaging. And actually, I agreed with them. And look, obviously, I think it's fine for me to say, like, I lean more on most political things, so, but not everything. I lean more on a sort of, I would say, leftist trajectory. That's not, that doesn't mean, though, that every leftist thing I've ever heard is right. In fact, I've heard a lot of things I think are nonsense. However, it doesn't mean that I don't want to hear every other view. I mean, I want to, and I want to engage that. But like, nobody is actually not doing that, is the thing. That's the other thing, is like, the critique there is that you can sort of say, well, I'm going to abscond from this, I'm going to prescind from judging here, I'm going to sort of be in the ethereal, kingdom of heaven. But actually, that isn't viable across the board. And so the task really should be, when and where do I engage, or sort of feel my feet planted on the earth, and when do I not? And look, there is a wide range of prudential judgment there. Some people shouldn't do that. I mean, I do think, like,
some people need to be quiet.
Some people should just be quiet. Yeah, and actually, it's not everybody that disagrees with me. In fact, no, but like, I also think too, like, I will say, like, being one thing that I do, and I don't think it's across the board have been an advantage, but being in the Catholic tradition, it is a lot harder to pretend that that's totally possible. It's like when I've got like I just saw a little bit ago, I think the first encyclical, it seems to be, the rumor is that Pope Leo the 14th is going to write, is on, like, the needs of the poor. I mean, I don't think the Pope is like a demigod or anything on earth who issues perfect and totally transparent decrees or anything, but I can't ignore that, right? I mean, he is the head of the Catholic Church, and like and there's a long tradition behind all that. So anyway, just to kind of say as well, like, but this is the thing I want to put back to you, because the other part about this is that the hypocrisy, right? I wonder how you feel about this, especially given your position as an educator. and this is my framework. It's hard enough to get 18 to 22-year-olds to take this stuff seriously.
Yeah.
God, beauty, is there a meaning to life? Or you say you were teaching a class, is there a soul? Is there anything kind of worth sacrificing for? Are there such things as transcendent values that sort of call us beyond our own solipsistic world? I mean, all of these big questions, right?
Yeah.
And I just have to say, like, when they see religion being co-opted and used, and Christianity in particular, or Christ's own name, being used to justify certain things that they thought, just 10 years ago, those same people cared about, it
Yeah.
starts to give the impression that it really was all just a game all along. And there's just yet another layer now that I, at least as an educator, have to fight through to be like, no, actually, some people take this seriously, not just when it's convenient. I don't know, like, how do you feel about that? Like, so we did the to our kids thing, right? We're tethered in that way.
Yeah.
We're also tethered to our students.
We have an obligation to educate these people. Yeah, I think there's a couple things. These students and the undergrad classes coming in, between the political stuff, COVID, something I'm consistently hearing is they're much more practical. They're not asking the big questions. They're not trying to they're just trying to survive. They're like, they just want to get a job. And so, I mean, because they're just tired of it all. They're tired of watching the whole society lose its mind debating these bigger questions. And particularly, of course, the religious is a huge factor in that. So, like, why would you think about anything except how am I going to get a job, pay for groceries, maybe be able to have a life? And so there's a return to the practical there, which the practical and the embodied isn't bad, but it does make some of these questions we're trying to ask about where does the transcendent fit into and relate with the embodied and the practical and the everyday. It makes those questions harder. And I think you're right. Like, yes, we all pick and choose when we're going to be political. Nobody's above that. But I think the irony isn't just that Christians are also political. It's that it's arguable that since the 1980s, evangelical Christians have been the most organized political group in the country. Like, there's a very specific agenda, and it's been basically playing out for decades. And I don't know if you can understand what's happening right now apart from that. And I love what you said about how, like, wait, we used to stand up for these things. Like, I think, is it Focus on the Family, James Dobson, when Bill Clinton had the sexual scandal, right? Like, how can you possibly have a leader who doesn't have character? There's no way to sever those two things. And of course, now we don't think that anymore. And so, like, what did we really believe in? Were those just a proxy for something else? And I don't know what that something else is. I know some of the theories, like Randall Balmer's book argues that abortion is actually like a facade issue for race, because we didn't care about abortion as evangelicals until I just got a text that Kirk died.
Did he?
Yeah. Sorry, it's weird to be filming this while that happens.
Wow. Yeah, I got the same thing. Man.
Whatever you do or don't feel there, it's not good for his family. It's not good for the situation.
Good for anybody. No.
Yeah.
Look, this is the thing. Like, yeah, this is why I said, I'm not 100% always on the side here, because look, I am committed to no violence on this. Like, there's no justification for this. It's weird to me. Okay. Like, here's the thing that does worry me, to be honest. It's just the top of mind since this happened. One thing I do fear is that there's a whole generation now at this point of young men that have been constantly told over several years that your worth is being a warrior in battle, that you need a dragon to slay, and that you need to go out and fight, and then it's been mixed with these weird tinges of other things. And the more this kind of political violence happens, the more literally they can simply take it. Like, oh, I am here, and where I can derive my purpose, since I have no meaning in life, is literally to engage in sort of the same thing, right? A kind of resistance and rebellion. And this kind of descent into chaos and violence is exactly where Christians, at the very least, but everybody of goodwill, should be able to unite.
Yeah.
Where's the red line anymore? I mean, look, this is the thing. This is the thing that bothers me so much about it. I'll just take one. We're doing a lot of controversial issues, so why not? I mean,
I don't even know how to continue. I just feel a little.
I don't either. It's like, look, okay, dispute with me on the facts if you want. Fine, we can do that. We can dispute facts. But if you think, for example, that what's going on in Gaza is bad, let's just say, well, I think that was bad when it was under Biden.
Yeah.
And I think it was bad when it's under Trump. I do think there's an argument to made that Trump made it worse. I don't do the false equivalence thing. However, I was just as absolutely incensed with Biden as on that issue. It's just one not little issue, but it's one issue. Not little at all. But as I am with Trump, and the point is, here's the thing that's really, really, you can tell I'm sort of struggling for words here. I don't think that's heroic. I don't think it's impressive to be consistent on your principles. I don't think it's that hard to see that, hey, if quote unquote my guy does it and it's wrong, I should just still say it's wrong. Back to your point about character, back in the day, that was just called having integrity. And when you get to the point as a society or as groups or as individuals where you don't think that is as important as your side getting a point on the scoreboard, then you have become functionally a nihilist. And this is why I always think of this line that Alistair McIntyre said. He said, there's a lot of people that worry about, moral relativism or nihilism coming from the masses, but it's always been the monarchs who have been the true nihilists.
Mm.
And what he meant by that is they don't believe in anything other than them retaining and expanding their power. So when it becomes a power play, and that's the heart of reality, then there is no other recourse than violence. And I don't care what side it comes from. It's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Violence of any kind directed at anyone. I don't know. Do we just pause here? I don't know if I turn off the. I mean, maybe it's important that we just don't, because stuff like this. The problem is that we're in a world where this type of stuff's happening all the time, and that this is not an interruption of the insanity.
Right.
This is the world we live in every day. So like we can't stop talking because this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the world we live in. I mean, yeah.
So what do we? I mean, aside from the I just feel so deeply helpless. I feel, and I don't think that has to be gendered, but I think because of cultural constructs, I feel emasculated. I feel unable to, I just feel weak. And I feel like anything I do, it just doesn't, it's just a drop in this cosmic bucket. And maybe that's a good realization. I don't know, but it's just, I don't know. I don't feel like I don't feel like I have any. I know I have to keep going and keep doing stuff, because if everybody stops doing stuff, nothing happens. But I just feel so helpless.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do too. It's and actually that is the thing that my students feel. They say that the most constantly, even prior to this sort of tragedy that just happened. Prior to October 7th, 2023, prior to whoever was president this time or last time, whatever, already anytime I had a class, we're discussing climate change or something, it's actually, I was pretty taken aback last semester. We were having a discussion about that in one of the classes. And you know how sometimes when the students are like there's a little lack of engagement, immediately I go self-critical, and I'm like, what am I doing? Maybe I'm just not facilitating. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a bad teacher. Which is very possible. But I kind of like just got like an inspiration to ask, like, do you guys think we can do anything about this? And they're like, no. Do you think we should try to do anything about it? So many words. What? And it's like, that's one issue that we're facing, and it is and it is true that for them, that's all they've known. Like someone just said yesterday in my class, like, look, we've always been at war since I've been born. Like, there's always been violence. It's just sort of like what we do as a country. And so I think despair. I mean, I think it was wise of the Desert Fathers to list despair as one of the most dangerous vices. They do that very constantly, like very oddly. You might think it's lust, or you might think it's even greed, anger. They often target as one of the worst, but actually despair comes in as one of the most severe very often. And it's because it's a sort of willful giving in to the sense that what is presented to you is the true world. Like, all this violence is really actually that is the logic of creation. That's the heart of things. All these lies, that's the heart of things. And as soon as you start to think, maybe it is. Why should I do anything? And that's despair.
Why wouldn't a phenomenology of violence be hiding an ontology of violence, right? Like,
Exactly.
what?
Right.
Yeah. No, and I think that's very interesting. And I think there's faith in the fact, not that, like, yeah, I can make a difference. Yeah, and like, it's just keeping going, not having any idea how you would make a difference. And even if it's going to make a difference, like Jeremiah continuing to preach, even though nothing, like, it's all still, you just need to keep doing what you're supposed to do. And if that, you don't know what the big picture is or isn't, or if that will mean anything, you just need to keep doing it. And I find it really hard to fight a battle that I don't know I'm going to be able to win within my lifetime.
Right.
Because I think, and what that hides is the fact that most of the battles I fight are for my own glory and nothing else. Because that's what I want to be the one leading the flag over the thing. And if I can't do that, I'm going to have to draw on some other resource that I haven't cultivated as much as, I don't know. Yeah.
And it does sort of bring to the fore. I mean, look, here it is. It's like, I just had a class today on Gregory of Nyssa's claim that the incarnation was the greatest display of God's power, because he did there what no one thought God could do, which is become weak. And there just is, this is the thing that keeps me Christian at the end of the day, if I'm being honest. Like, it's not, there's a lot of reasons not to be.
It's not the evidence for the historical Jesus. It's not the ontological argument, right?
Okay. Now that you're mentioning them, it's like, I mean, look, I mean, you and I both know that can have its place for sure, but like, no, that's not the thing. I mean, in the face of this kind of stuff, right? That's not the thing. No, it isn't. It isn't that I can reason anything. What it is that, like, in Christianity, I mean, I was showing my students this morning, that early graffiti of Alexamenos worships as God, and he's like Jesus is depicted as a jackass.
The donkey,
yeah. And then we talked about 1 Corinthians, and we talked about Gregory, and it's just this sort of aesthetic. I can't keep my eyes off of it. It's this thing of like, what it's like Christianity does acknowledge that the heart of this world is violence. That's why God is crucified.
Yeah.
At the same time, he tramples down death by death. And so he acknowledges the heart of this false world as violence, even as he's exactly in the same instant revealing this world as false, which is to say, bringing to birth the true. And how that looks, like practically and in the day to day with each of us and in the church and in our lives and in our families and in the politics and stuff, is, I think, almost literally unpredictable. I mean, and so that fact, that aesthetic sort of aura around the central sort of claim of our faith is almost the only thing that's a check against final despair for me. And yeah, I don't know. So I don't know. There's no like. It's not to say we shouldn't organize. Of course we should. It's not to say we shouldn't fight. I think we should. And in some ways. But that kind of like that weight of the end and the final things, not to rub it back into past conversations, but this is, to be honest with you, this is a part of what makes me galvanized as a universalist, because it does take the ultimate pressure off everything in the here and now, not so that I could ignore the here and now or depreciate the value of our actions, but precisely so that I can tell the truth about the here and now without having to distort it, because the gravity at the end weighing on it is too hard and you can't but distort it. No, I can tell the truth about our current president is in so many ways the embodiment of everything wrong with America. And we could list those. And I do think he's duped a lot of people and gotten them to think they were buying into one thing, but instead they were betraying everything that they had previously said. And people respond to that variously. But I can tell the truth about that, not because I have hated the president into eternal damnation, but precisely because I do not think that's where he will end up. So I am freed of that weight to tell the truth about what he is right now. Because what he is right now is the thing that will be destroyed. And so that kind of thing, the interplay of eschatology, of the cross, and of our engagement with the world today, somewhere in that matrix is where I try to be. Not that I'm always successful. I don't know. I'm rambling.
If you were going to smuggle universalism in, you should have bought me pizza first.
I have coffee.
Yeah. I think regardless of all of the details of that, I think the eschatological has to be constantly on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
That the good stands in contrast to what is now, revealing what it is, what it isn't, what it could be, and reminding you of what it ought to be.
Mm-hmm.
The ought standing over the is, and
Mm-hmm.
judging it and drawing it upward.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, you were talking about organize. Constantly Christians are making these contrasts between a communist eschatology and Christian eschatology, and the communist grabs hold of history and tries to force it,
Right.
And those types of things. And I'm still struggling to articulate what the Christian eschatology is in contrast to that in terms of what our role should be.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we grab hold of history and beat the crap out of it to bring about utopia, but I also don't let go precisely because the kingdom has begun. It starts small. It's not all here, and we're meant to bring it about on earth as it is in heaven. But it's also not me bringing it about. It's God through,
right.
And I just don't know how to articulate it correct. I know what the poles are that it shouldn't be.
Right.
But what is it actually in the middle? And I don't.
Yeah, it's this kingdom, the Christ's kingdom is not of this world, but it's for this world. These sorts of formulations are just capturing the poles, right? It's well, I need to say it's a sort of divine God's action among us in the imminent, in the here and now, is God. It's a non-negotiable. On the other hand, the rulers of the world lord it over them, but not so among you. The greatest among you is a servant. the inversion of divine power doesn't mean that divine power isn't powerful. It means it's the only really finally true power. But that's all great. I mean, we can spin these formulas and stuff like that. But what is it? How does it actually transition into this life, right? And I don't know. At this point, I'm tempted to just say like, but then I feel like that's another pull, right? It's like I was about to say like Saint Therese of Lisieux. She has the thing about the little way or the small way, and it's just like, you know, do what you can a little every day. It's nothing like, you know, it's like pay attention to the small things and whatever's within your realm. And you don't know like what sort of seed you're, you know, sowing and what God can do to bring it about, et cetera, et cetera. But then I also agree with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who says somewhere that you know, whether or not a man hates me is a matter of religion, and I leave that up to God. But whether or not he's allowed to lynch me is a matter of justice, and I'm going to fight against that. Like, you know, so like there's no like escape there, and I don't know. Maybe that's the point.
Yeah.
Maybe we can't escape one way or the other.
Well, I think it's interesting to bring in Martin Luther King because, I mean, his "I Have a Dream" speech is constantly brought out as the optimistic, we can do this, right?
Right.
But even he, towards the end of his life, before he died, kind of said, I don't think America is going to be able to accomplish this.
Right.
Like, he kind of said, like, the dream isn't going to be made
Human.
manifest. And
Right.
he believes the arc of the moral universe is long, but arcs towards justice. But that justice, like, it might sputter out in little turds down here, but it doesn't, you don't get the whole pile until the end. But I don't know. I do think one of the, I don't know if it's unique to the West or America, but I do think the severing of the gospel and social justice, and I think the two different definitions of justice, because we obviously believe that justice is involved in the gospel because God has to justly punish Jesus. But then when it comes to God being justice itself for the oppressed, I think we've just severed these things. And I think that's one of the ways that otherwise decent Christians have avoided facing what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, how does that really work though? Like, how do they do that? It's
I mean, it's salvation. We just have to focus on the salvation of the soul, not the body.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends who that's their thing. Like, yeah, the politics is horrible, but my job is to shepherd souls.
Right. Which, again, this is the part where it is hard to get out of eschatology on that, because in a certain way, that's totally rational, right? If it really is that everything is on the line for everything after this life, one way or the other.
Okay, you're bringing in Universalism again.
You know, everything's connected in my mind. I can't.
Hey, I don't want a coherent vision of the universe, Jordan. I just wanted to make fun of some views. I don't.
Yeah, I don't want to wallow in the chaos. No, it's okay. I'll try, but yeah, you know, it's like there is a kind of coherence to that. I mean, there like I can see why someone thinks that. It also happens to be psychologically beneficial in the short term, because then it kind of relieves you of having to think about all that stuff.
Yeah.
So there's that, but then it is kind of like, yeah, again, nothing outweighs that. Of course, nothing can outweigh that. That's the whole design of it. But yeah, but I mean, at the very least, if we're going to be just biblicist about it, let's go back to Matthew 25 and like, what is the criteria? You know, it isn't how many people you convinced of the gospel message. So I don't know, but it's I don't know, like there's a great like void, you know, in all this. Like there's a I do sense it among my students, and I sense it in myself, where it's like, is there anything that's worth sacralizing? You know, and it's like and if it is my soul as opposed to my body, isn't that just to say that the sacred is not for this physical world? Because it's the thing that's not a part of this world, not anchored down, you know? It's like, I remember Jordan Peterson shooting off a tweet months ago at the Pope Francis, the late Pope, something about he should stick to his job of pastoring and saving souls, not telling people what to do with their bodies, you know. And it was just exactly that sentiment. And yeah, the thing is, God is incarnate.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
whatever's true of Christ has to be eternally divine because he's God and he's got a
No,
body. So,
it's got to be bodily. God created
yeah,
it, called it good. It's incarnate. It resurrects. I think, I mean, people always say, we got to bring them to Jesus, but Jesus says, "What you do to the least of these, you do
right.
unto me." So,
Yeah,
like, maybe we're bringing them to Jesus, and then they're just spitting on his face,
exactly.
while thinking that we're accepting his grace and mercy. And I
Look,
don't
and
know.
this is the thing. It's like it's just that we're constantly like I think Jesus targeted hypocrisy so often. I mean, if I can read into it a little bit, not just because it's like I think we've dumbed that down to like, oh well, he was like kind of opposing the religious leaders of the day, which is very vague, but okay. But what he said about them is important. It's hypocrisy, right? It's play acting.
Yeah.
And it's presenting the world and yourself as one thing, but really the world and yourself are otherwise. And if that's like, I think the thing that irks him so much about it wasn't just, oh, you're a liar. I think we basically reduce hypocrisy to lying or something. It's that you're actually training people. You're training them to be indifferent towards God, precisely because your performance contradicts everything that you are saying. And that's not just that you're sort of inconsistent or you don't have integrity. That's true. And that you don't have character. That's true. It's that you're actually sort of tempting people in their spirit to think there really is nothing to what I'm saying. Because I don't even come close to even trying to live by that. Like, you could take an example, and I'm indicted in this. What are the things that we focus on when we do talk about society and culture today and the kids of today? What's all the bad things they do? I don't know. It's the woke stuff. It's all the sexual stuff. It's it's
Anything that anything that jeopardizes the focus on the idol of the family, basically.
exactly. It's that kind of thing, right? It's anything that betrays the 1950s American dream. Like, that's the kind of thing, but it's like, look, what about the fact that the New Testament calls only one sin idolatry, which is the worst thing you could say in the Bible? That's greed. So how concerned are you all about the CEOs and the Wall Street bankers? Are you really concerned about that? Are you concerned about the fact that our president is a billionaire and all of his friends are billionaires, and that they just had a dinner last week, including Bill Gates, the one who I thought was like the Antichrist behind all the vaccines and stuff, like, but he was there. Mark Zuckerberg was there. Musk was there for a while before they had their falling out of the egos. I mean, look, they were all there. I mean, does that bother you at all? Because, the Bible actually says greed is idolatry, and compares money and wealth to fire. And Jesus tells a story about somebody who stores up in the barns, and this very night your soul. Are you concerned about someone's soul? This very night your soul will be demanded of you. So if you care
Yeah.
about their souls, why don't you care about their wealth? And it's
Mhm.
like, well, we don't do that, but that would be way more obviously if you're just going to tally up the verses. If
Oh,
you're just a
100%.
Bible believing Christian, it's wealth how hard it is for the rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Like, that's the thing. And so this is, but the thing is, we know that because we like had to study the Bible. We were forced to do it. Yeah. But like, my students kind of know that. They could not spin out all the verses and say, here's the chapter verse or whatever. They couldn't say there's one, in the New Testament that calls greed twice idolatry. No, they couldn't say that, but they do know whatever else they know. They know that whatever they're seeing here and how people are justifying this and that and like what Jesus sort of looked like is nowhere near the same. And so the obvious and natural and I would say rational conclusion is, oh, you don't really care about that other picture. the picture of Jesus. Because you're incarnating an entirely different portrait altogether, one that's pretty much the opposite almost.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's almost as if the wealthiest empire in the history of the world doesn't want to talk about greed, but just get mad at gay people, transgenderism, these types of subjects,
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
that because that pushes it somewhere else. Yeah, it's.
Yeah,
I mean, the sexual sin in the New Testament is the ones that I think Jesus is most loving and forgiving about in a
right.
way. And people always bring up the Paul thing that, like, sex is the worst thing because it's against your own body. But when it comes to the woman caught in adultery, that's when Jesus is most patient and loving and forgiving. And you're right, it's hypocrisy and it's greed, where he says some of the most intense things he's ever said.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to find ways to nuance that and say, oh, but there are rich people in scripture.
Right.
So, and we're going to find ways around those verses, but we're not going to find ways around those other verses that we do like.
Right.
And I think that's what it comes to, is you can always make a plausible structure to explain away or emphasize whatever you want to. And of course, that's what we've done and are doing. And we're going to do that all the way to whatever end we want, even if that means like all the immigrants get screwed, even if it doesn't, like with Gaza, we just let happen what's happening, which, I mean, it's not even letting happen. We're funding it. And we can give answers to all of those things that might be a stretch for one verse or one thing, but if you do it so many times as I think we're doing, it reveals that the whole thing is a house of cards.
Like, let's be very concrete as an example. I said this to my wife this morning. I would say to anyone, I know people might think it's a clickbait thing. They didn't whenever Trump made it a feature of his own campaign. The Epstein files. You know how often I heard about Pizzagate and Hillary Clinton?
The emails. Yeah.
The emails, the pizza, the sex trap. How about this? How many people have recommended to me to go see Sound of Freedom?
Yeah.
How many legitimate and I think very good people have been for years working in, and you and I probably know some of the same people on this, in sex trafficking, like ministries trying to save kids. Good. That's great. That's Christian. I support that completely. And are we really going to say, when it comes to the most notorious, well-documented, convicted sex trafficker of our generation and lifetime in this country, we don't want to see the files? And here's what I will say. I don't care who is in there. I don't care what political party they're a part of. They all should meet justice. I don't care if they're on my team. I don't care if I've voted for them or not. I don't care if I've bought their products or not. I don't care if I'm currently using their products or not. Put them all before the court of justice. Because here's the thing: if you don't, like, I've had somebody try to argue with me on biblical grounds that basically, not like Jeff Bezos's hoarding of wealth is not a problem for Christians. And here's my thing: like, comes back to the same thing, right? Again,
where do they go? Like Solomon?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like it's just like, it's kind of back to your thing, right? Like the soul and body split, sort of like that, performing that with the Bible and saying, well, it's just like never talking about. But that's the thing, right? That's the tell. Again, it's not about me personally judging Jeff Bezos. I don't know the guy, okay, but I do know this: that where your treasure is, there your heart is. I do know that how hard is for the all the things we could list. But here's the point: if the New Testaments or the Bible's very harsh warnings about hoarding wealth and about greed do not apply to literally the richest man in the history of the human race, that just means the Bible doesn't apply to this world. It is utterly irrelevant. You may as well throw it out. Who cares if people are reading it or misreading it or never reading it? It literally has nothing to do with the actual life of this world. Because you're saying the most extreme example matched up with the most extreme statements warning against that kind of life, they don't connect. They're not even relevant to each other. At that point, why am I surprised when a 20-year-old in my class thinks it's all a bunch of show?
Yeah.
What,
It's real in a way that's not tangible.
right, or the genocide. Again, if you want to dispute it's a genocide, fine, that's a question of facts. But if there is a genocide, and I believe there is that going on in Gaza, twiddling our thumbs, saying, religion's not relevant to that. It's my belief in God, the truth, beauty, goodness is not related to that. My belief that every human being is created in the image of God, not related to that. If it's not related to that, it isn't about the world, and it's not about reality, and so it may as well not be. They don't articulate it in those words. That is very much what they feel, though, in their soul.
I think we should definitely, a focus of this should be, so how do we make people believe? It doesn't need to be like, how do we make them believe Jesus is like, it doesn't have to be like, okay, let's give you but how do we get them to believe that anything matters or anything is sacred or there is any line anywhere? And I think it's not just like, what do we do? Like, which cause do we go support and what are the practical steps? But how do we even lay the infrastructure for anyone to care such that they would seek out causes or whatever it is? Or I don't entirely know, because there doesn't feel like there's anything sacred in this world, in America right now. Like, I think Trump was 100% on the money when he said he could shoot someone in broad daylight and get away with it. It's AI. It's, there's 100 ways to frame that, just as we frame scripture it conveniently. It doesn't, there's no fact that will change our situation.
Right.
It's going to have to be a reframing, a conversion, if you will, of the paradigms that we're applying and seeing those facts through. And I don't know.
Have you seen any, if I ask you, like, have you seen glimmers of hope? I know I've seen your own wife try to organize and do some things and do some events. I mean, what have you guys seen where you are that maybe, just even if they're just little glimmers of hope?
It's hard because we're in such a small place and people don't feel like they have any power. They don't believe that it makes a difference to being here, even though, I mean, in some ways it's the small towns that are the ones that lead to the votes that led to, so the small town is the battlefield, just not in a glorious way.
Right.
And maybe the one glimmer of hope, because I'm just sliding into the negativity again. Draw me back, Jordan. This is, if I was a Universalist, my goodness would be, and I didn't mean to rebuke you earlier for bringing it up. I'm happy to talk about it.
Well, I'm pretty mad, but no, I'm just kidding.
One thing that has been comforting is the people attending the protests here. And this, it's sad in one way, but it's comforting in another. They're all in the later years of life.
Yeah.
And it's sad that the young people aren't out and doing stuff, but it's also just really inspiring that the people that I caricature and stereotype as the ones who are like, screw DEI, screw all of the young perverted people, like, they're seeing what's happening. And some of them are saying, oh God, no. And so there's, if you just go to these protests, it's like 90% people, retired men and women out there with their signs. And there's something sad that it's not younger as well, but also just like, okay, they're standing up and doing whatever they can, and they're heartbroken over where the world is going. And that, I don't know if that's a glimmer of hope, but it's, it helps me feel like I'm not just a young person who's mad.
Right.
And it's like, no, okay, the wise people who've been around a bit are seeing this too. And I don't know.
Well, I mean, and it's like, in my experience, on that note, like, my own parents are an example of this. I mean, I grew up, my parents have never been really fanatical about anything, whether it's religion or politics. So it was never like a focus, but where I grew up was a small town, Midwest Bible Belt. and but very working class. The main thing in town was a huge factory. My dad had worked there, and so there was that weird mix of like union on the one side, but also like really conservative. And back in the days when at least the pretense was that character mattered and a leader just couldn't, you don't just hire a godless champion to fight your cause. You actually find a leader that can inspire your belief and trust. That was like the thing. So like that was,
How naive.
yeah,
And yeah.
and to my parents' great credit, they have not bought into this, and actually I think it's galvanized them to see the swing, probably as it has some of the people you're talking about that you see at the protests, because it's like there's like a remnant. There are people that feel like, whoa, this is like a deal with the devil. Like, sell your soul and I'll give you the sort of shiny prize, which is like what, slamming on the liberals, or being anti-woke or something. Of course, except when it comes to Gaza, and then all of a sudden everyone who disagrees with you is an anti-Semite, which seems like a form of wokeness. But nevertheless, it's like, it's there are people that have this sense that like, look, we actually do want to have integrity to our words. This is going to be a weird parallel, but one of my favorite ways to that I've ever heard someone articulate sort of the task of theology was by Rowan Williams in his book I think it's just called On Christian Theology or something like that. And he says in there that most of what theology is about is trying to figure out how or if we can have integrity to the words we say about God. Like, do the words have, I loved that framing. Do they have integrity? That doesn't yet say anything about how does your, symbolic stuff or any, like, it doesn't talk about how the words refer. And I like that because it's like a prior step. It's like the motive in all this to think through and refine our concepts and have arguments and make distinctions, but maybe also back off and say, actually, it's not that technical or whatever. All that interplay in the task of theology is to at least do as best we can, never fully satisfied, to try to give integrity to the words we say. And I love that because it's very obvious how that transfers into the life, not just the words about God, but your life in the Spirit, in God. And I think it's the same thing. It's another way to get at the hypocrisy thing, right? I mean, it's the same thing. What you do and what you say by what you do, the embodiment of the Christian life, you can ask, does it have integrity in that way? And I do think there are people like my own parents, for which I'm very grateful, and I give credit to them. And I do think they've inspired me in terms of my own resolve on this, that they have said, no, not doing that. Even though we're conservative, and I don't know for sure, and maybe not, but they probably voted mostly. It certainly their own parents did, all their life voted a certain way. But when it came down to it, and there was like hey, here's a deal for you, they said, no, we're not doing that. That's selling out, like, your soul.
Yeah.
And I think there are people like that, and those are the people that hopefully, through God's grace, are going to be the inspiration for those that are the younger ones that are just staying home and or in despair. They're literally trapped in despair right now. And so wherever those people are, I want to look at them. I'll add one other thing. Sorry, I'm talking too much here, but
That's good. I invited you to talk.
Okay,
so
yeah.
They already hear me all the time. So yeah.
Look, I've outed myself on so many other things at this point. Whatever. I'm just letting it all hang out.
Was it not already out? I felt like it was pretty out. Maybe I just
yeah. I think God actually will save everyone because He wants to. But no, but like, not that. I am partial to the Bernie Sanders type of politics. Judge me, However, one of the things that I noticed in his first campaign, I think either 2016, I guess maybe 2020, was I was going back and listening to interviews with him from the 80s, back when he was a mayor. And one thing that I wish he'd have done more of, because he did it a lot in the 80s that I really appreciated, was almost just like articulate not just a positive political agenda or like, here's a policy we want to change, or, not just the stuff about the top 1% that I agree with, But he would talk a lot before about like there was one interview in particular where he says, I don't actually believe that the heart of human beings is rivalry and hatred. I really believe that somewhere in us, the real core is sympathy, is empathy, is working together. That's utopian, right? You might say. But what was great was, of course, he knows just as well as anyone that's not a description of the world. But it was almost like a religious conviction. And instead, to your point earlier, instead of faulting communists or Marxists or whatever, he's not that, by the way. There's a difference between that and democratic socialism. But instead of faulting them for that kind of conviction, why not recognize in that your own religious conviction? Which is that all, like the Christ is the image of God, according to whom Adam and all of Adam was made, all humans.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's precise, like communism is an inverted Christian eschatology. Bertrand Russell said that Marx rejected religion but maintained an optimism that only religion could justify.
Exactly.
And so in the heart of communism is something that we have to affirm.
Right.
Even if it's upside down.
Right.
Like and so, I mean, a huge thing, I think part of what makes America I don't want to say what it is today is that we've so rejected communism that we can't even have a whiff of what was actually really good there.
Right.
Yeah. So, but now we're both communists and I'm going to get deported.
All kinds of labels.
No, but it's.
Yeah, no, and it's one of those things where, in a way, I would want to understand, the Marxist tradition is a kind of, it should be an indictment on Christianity itself, precisely because it's as if Christianity lost the nerve to follow through with its own conviction, and so somebody else took up the mantle. Is it a distorted Christianity? Of course it is.
Yeah.
Most things are, but then don't mistake the distortion for a temptation at a false dilemma. The false dilemma is, in fact, the false dilemma is, kind of back to what, you were saying, some people tell you, soul or body, which one? Yeah. Kingdom of heaven or kingdom of earth? Well, as you already quoted, I'm sorry, I said the Our Father, actually, those are supposed to go together, on earth as it is in heaven. So no, like that's the thing. I mean, we could go down. I mean, Christianity, I think, is brilliant at this. Is he God or is he human? Both. You like to talk about this, like being or becoming, right? Both. It's like this is the way it goes, right? And that's not haphazard. That is like a feature, not a bug, to the whole Christian faith. And so when I look at communism, sure, the excesses, much less Stalinism's even worse. But communism, right? It's like, yeah, okay, you're distorted on this or that. You've given up on one half of the spirit, and you've glorified the other half. So it's a half. It's not the whole. But it is a half. So like we got to retain it. And I often say too, just to throw this out there, I don't understand why you wouldn't want to at least be socialist adjacent when it comes to economics, because wouldn't that just clarify everybody's own pathologies? If nobody was struggling under economic duress constantly day in and day out, they no longer have the excuse that, I stole or killed or betrayed or lied because I'm starving half the time. No, what you can say back is, no. You're taken care of materially. So what's wrong with your soul? So you take away the excuses of the deficiency of the body precisely to expose the sin of the soul. So in that sense, you should support anything that actually takes care of everyone's physical needs, because at least then we could focus on the spiritual pathologies.
100%. I think if we ever did achieve a physical utopia on Earth, where racism's gone, sexism's gone, classism, like if we ever achieve that, I think the next thing that follows after the initial high is the existential, oh no, but I'm still not okay. Yeah. I am still full of angst and longing, and whatever I thought all of the physical equality would bring, it doesn't, because all that utopia on Earth would be is extending the privilege of like the white man in the boardroom everywhere else. The problem is rich white men are some of the most oppressing people I know, right? Like there's a chasm in their heart. If you want to just expand that so we can all share in the chasm, it doesn't solve all of the problems. It's perhaps a precondition to getting to the real problem. And I wouldn't want to sever the spiritual and physical because that makes the dichotomy that we're like critiquing. But I think you're totally right that once the playing field's leveled in terms of physical stuff, then we can have the actual conversation about some of these other things.
I think it was Nicholas Berdyaev, who was a Russian philosopher in the mid-20th century, like a lot of those guys at the time, was a former communist and materialist and Marxist and stuff, but then kind of fell out with that and rediscovered kind of the Russian Orthodox tradition, but always retained a lot of the Marxist critiques, even though he critiqued Marxism pretty often. But that was one of his critiques, is what you just said. He called it, what's the exact phrase? He said, exactly what you just said. He said, even if we were to resolve all of society's ills and basically set up the material utopia, which he also agrees with you, like kind of like, yeah, of course we should want that, step one. But he did say, he's like, yeah, but all that would do is reveal. I think the quote is something like reveal the inherent tragedy of human life itself, or like death itself, or something like that.
Yeah, you got that from me. It's
You're doing some weird time bending thing, and
time doesn't work the way you think it does, Jordan. Creation is not a path.
What?
Yeah, sorry.
What is this nonsense you're starting to come up with? But no, it's like that was exactly his point, and I just always thought that's an obviously Christian thing, right? It's like the famous. Well, never mind. That was a different point. But so it's just sort of like this kind of to me, it's just like an obvious thing. So like that's I will say this, that I do think sometimes people misunderstand like my own proclivities towards leftist stuff or democratic socialism. I don't see, because inherently my sympathy for that is already one that goes beyond that loyalty, right? Because the idea would be that's like baseline for me. That's not the whole of like, that's not like the sum total of the human being by far. But almost like, just as Marx thought capitalism and its success was a precondition for the Marxist utopia, I would say that the Marxist utopia is a precondition for true spiritual revolution. And that's sort of Berdyaev's view as well, and Sergei Bulgakov and some other people around that time. They knew that tradition well. And I'm just like, so my sympathy for that isn't, again, I'm not a political absolutist in that sense. It's not that, oh, if I vote for this democratic socialist, I've given my soul to them. I think that the policies and the agenda that matter to them are actually fundamentally Christian, whether or not they call it that. At the very least, it comports with my own Christian faith. But it comports precisely as a part or a moment or a piece or a condition of the whole.
It's like, oh yeah, good point. Let's integrate that into the whole. Yeah,
right.
It's and you're mistaken it. Like it's idolatry to think that's the whole, to mistake the thing that it's reflecting for the thing itself. Do you think that does your eschatology have us actually getting there? Or is it like, no, that would just be what would need to happen if we ever were to get there, but we're totally not going to get there?
Well, for me, we will get there, because insofar as justice, goodness, anything that we strive for is itself integral to God's act of creation, like the project of creating a world, then those things will happen in some fashion in order for the world to be created. And I do think that whatever God starts, he completes. And so in that sense, it will happen. Now, I don't know what role I will be playing, or you or me or our generation, or maybe it won't be for millions of years. I don't know. But yeah, I think it will happen. And so this is where like I would pair like Martin Luther King, the arc of justice bends, or of the universe bends towards justice. Add to that our actual picture of the universe now is exponentially expanding. That's a pretty huge arc. So it might take aeons,
Does that happen and then Christ comes, or does Christ come and that's the pinnacle of that happening? That's what brings it about.
I think that they are intermingled in a different way. I think that happening in Christ's parousia, which means arrival or presence, is the same thing spoken about from different angles.
Okay, so that's the process of creation,
Uh-huh.
precisely because God still is creating. It's not ours versus God's. It's
Yeah.
the unfolding of God's creation in and through us.
Yes, exactly.
Is that's how you would frame that? Okay.
Yeah. So I wouldn't I wouldn't want a sequence there in the sense of like, if we just put enough stones on this tower, eventually it'll get to the point where God's like, I'm going to come down and sit on the tower. Right. I wouldn't want to like, first this project's finished, then we're there. It's the finishing of the project and the arrival of God is our two sides of the two dynamics of the same movement, two sides of the same movement in a way. And so, in a sense, you could go from either direction. Does God need to come in order for us to realize this utopia? Or does utopia need to happen in order for God to come? And I would just say it's both. I mean, it's like
Sort of like we
both.
meet him in the air.
Yeah,
What,
exactly. Right,
like
right.
yeah, like you guys got so distracted with the rapture, you
Yeah.
but
Well, like in the book of Revelation, just to pick a symbol, it's like, the New Jerusalem, you've got the 12 or the foundations, and you're like, oh, but what do they stand for? Well, they stand for the prophets and the apostles. The foundations are people's lives. And so the city, the New Jerusalem, yes, it comes down. I love that dynamic symbolically, just on the level of the image. Yes, it comes down to earth. So there's a wedding. We all know that new heaven, new earth is sort of like a wedding, heaven and earth. But the building, which is also a garden, that mixture there in terms of time is the foundation stones are living. It says they're living stones. So so what is that then? It's I'm like being a part of the body of Christ is also being a part of the structure of the New Jerusalem, and like these are one and the same thing. So the project of that we contribute to when we advocate for things, when we advocate for justice, when we seek beauty, when we try to realize these things in the church corporately and in our individual lives, is the same thing as the building of the New Jerusalem. Like these are one thing. Otherwise, I do think we're stuck in even just like pulling back from all the like engagement stuff. Karl Rahner in this really, really offhanded, really small article on heaven. I mean, he just sort of points out, and I kind of always thought it was like pretty. After he said it, I was like, okay, it's kind of obvious that's true. He's like, I mean, it's not as if the end is just the last moment in time. So, right? I mean, it's like, so the entrance or the perfection or the culmination of all space-time can't itself just be the last moment or space-time coordinate in the series. Rather, it has to be the perfection of all space and time, no matter how they've been extended in their dimensionality. Which is to say, we are currently participating in eternity when we do good, because anything that's truly good is eternal. And eternity itself's content is built up of the good. And so you think both directions at once.
it's interesting because I feel a discomfort with this idea that we're like ushering it in, but I also struggle to figure out what the age of church, what this part in the story plays, if not us in that story doing something.
Right.
And
those are bad ways to run that. I mean, Nikolai Fedorov and the 1800s Russia. The idea, like there's a line here between like we can physically engineer immortality, which is like a Fedorovian.
I like that part. That part. It's I'm a little uncomfortable with it, but I like it at the same time.
And there's a kind of like, and actually there's some interesting Ilia Delio. You probably read some of her, given some of your work. She has like in one of her books, why what's it called? Re-enchanting the World or something. Why AI Needs Religion. I have some of my students read it. But she has like a moment where she does a little bit like there were medieval treatises that were kind of like oddly utopian. like that did have a sense that the ushering in of the kingdom of God was going to happen through the church and through our acts here and now, and that would usher in sort of like a millenarian sort of utopian on earth, sort of, I don't know, 1,000-year reign or something. And so there's like a long precedent of that.
I can't hear that without thinking 1,000-year Reich. It's just I don't want to think that, but it's the only thing I can think.
But that's a perfect example, right? It's like, okay, but
that's a bad version.
Yeah. You can take the framework or like the impulse behind that and absolutely warp it into a demonic project, no question.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm gonna have to think about what you said a bit more, but I think something I am convicted of is that in avoiding the communist project, we've sort of dug into Western individualism a bit, and made the gospel. And I said this already a bit, but we've made it personal, private. Church-state separation helped that as well. And so, regardless of how the end is brought about or inaugurated, I think our role in that process, whatever it is, must not just be personal, but also social. And I think that's Trinitarian.
Right.
I think that's like ecclesiological, but I wonder how much broader it is. And once you start thinking in those social categories, does it then make more sense that part of bringing heaven to earth is social, economic, political? Maybe not in like a theocracy kind of way, but at least like we're not abandoning those realms entirely. And I think, tying it back to America right now, so much of what Christians have thought they were fighting has been against communism. And the communal element of that, and seeing it as, no, it's a personal spiritual battle. And I get what they thought they were fighting. I understand why they thought they were fighting it. There's good parts about that fight. Like, I don't abandon the fight altogether, but it's also created a counter revolution that's caused us to retreat into a very siloed definition of personal spirituality that, as you said, has nothing to do with the world. And I think most people would say, oh, it does have something to do with the world right here in my personal life. And so that's the way of still having it tethered to reality, but not in an expansive vision. A personal one that isn't social, I would argue, isn't Trinitarian, and definitely, if it's ecclesiological, in a very narrow sense.
It very much still feels like the church is an association and you're a member of it. Here's a big distinction I'd want to make. And I think it's a fundamentally Christian one, though I think it's available to other, in other ways. But a person is not an individual. An individual is not a person. A person is the synthesis of individuality and universality. And that kind of thing. This is right there at the two central claims or mysteries of the Christian faith. It's right in front of your face. There is no Father apart from the Son. The Father is not Father apart from the Son. The Son is not Son apart from the Father. Neither of them are who they are apart from the Spirit. This is the whole point of all those debates about, how the persons are distinct but one, and the acts of origin, blah, 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 that we get into in another context. But the point, at the very least, is, it's great. Like, you got St. Simeon, the new theologian, saying in the East, in like the 11th, 10th century, that you could just as well say that the Son causes the Father as the Father causing the Son, because they mutually constitute each other.
Let's just do all the heresies all at once. Let's just get it.
Keep going. Or you could go to the West, and St. Bonaventure, when he answers this sort of quintessential scholastic problem, that does the Father generate the Son because he's Father, or is he Father because he generates the Son? He answers the second one. It's in the act of generating the Son that he is but he is also Father. And so there's a sort of deep impulse there to say you are not who you are apart from what you do, and specifically what you do in relation to another person. Persons constitute each other. They're not monads like individual units.
I love that you're definitely bringing in the Hegel, which is going to be. I'm pretty sure you're going to bring the hammer down hard later, because I
Yeah.
know we got another. This is like the week of me talking to you,
I
because we
know.
got another
I
interview.
know I know
But
that
I
on
think
the
that's
calendar you start it and you put a bunch of flowers around this week. You're like, my
my Jordan,
favorite week.
my week of wood, my wood week, my wood Jordaning, my wood Jordaning. But I know, I think there's a lot of value there. It's not just that we're overemphasizing the individual at the expense of the communal. It's that the individual as a category is kind of nothing except
Yeah.
in that dialectical off the other.
Right. Right.
And I think there's a lot of value in that. Like, you don't understand yourself as self except reflected in the eyes of the other. And
Because
I think that's in unavoidably Trinitarian in the way that I would think of it.
exactly. And it's in, incarnation again. I mean, there is no Son of God incarnate without the mother.
Okay, bringing in the Catholic
Right.
stuff.
See, I'm bringing in all the whole myself, my synthesis of opposites. Yeah.
But
No,
you didn't know who you were until we had this conversation.
I'm in a sense, I'm unfolding before our very eyes in conversing with you. Absolutely. But like, yeah, it's this, which apparently is also very Kierkegaardian. I've recently learned, but the point would be what I think is useful, like practically and politically about this sort of thing, like to connect these maybe otherwise very seemingly disparate realms, is that what it does mean is, again, when I'm presented in the political realm between what I would consider a false dilemma, are you like a collectivist or an individualist? Are you a communist or a libertarian? I immediately know that those are false oppositions. Those are false temptations to reduce from one direction or the other. And this is why I do think, and here I'll really get some heat from certain people, that liberal democracy as a political realm, sure, it's got weaknesses and all this stuff. So it's not itself a utopia. For that, you have to move beyond capitalism. But liberal democracy, at its best, is a Christian necessity because it both respects the person, but also in their individuality, but also that's rights and all that stuff. But it also respects the person in its responsibility and interconnectedness to everyone else. Right. So we're not just units in a democracy. The liberalism part is the recognition of what in the Catholic tradition recently was fairly recently was called the infinite dignity of every single person. Infinite dignity, divine dignity. And so you respect that even if you believe someone's wrong. You respect their freedom to sort of think through and be wrong about this or that. That is it's not just a concession. That's my point. This is why I'm not a theocrat or an integralist or whatever. No, it's built in. Even if they're not Christian, even if they're atheist, even if they're whatever you think is bad, you don't just concede freedom to them in some degree of liberality. They deserve it from you. They deserve it from you. And if you deny that to them, you're denying that they're a person. If you deny they're a person, you are assaulting the image of God. So in that sense, that is a non-negotiable, the liberal, but the democratic part,
So it's not a grace. It's just the nature of them.
Yeah, it's the nature of them, and it's inherent to our own faith, in my opinion.
In your framing, yes.
Yeah. And at the same time, though, we aren't just individuals, even though the individuality of each one ought to be respected simultaneously and only with its collective responsibility to one and all. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, kind of thing. Yes, that's also true. And yes, we come together, and yes, as a democratic society, we try to make it work as a group and a collective. And no, you don't exist outside of that, as the tariffs are showing. So so this sort of thing, that very dynamic, that's not what I want to say is that's from a theological perspective, Christian theological perspective, that's not like an unfortunate kind of we're making concessions and just doing the least common denominator thing to kind of get everybody on board. No. These are positively values that we want to uphold for their own intrinsic sake, for the sake of the person in that kind of dynamic of the person as both individual and collective and both at once. I mean, that sounds like really wrought, but you could simply go to 1 Corinthians 12 and say, if one suffers, all suffer. If one rejoices, all rejoice. That's the logic of a body.
I mean, even if we have some distinctions in terms of eschatology and how this all plays out, I think a thing that we're really hitting on is whatever we need to be pushing for as theologians and Christians in the 21st century in America needs to not only be my personal salvation in Jesus Christ, but the social implications of that. And I don't mean those in the sense of, okay, we need to focus on the social more than the personal. I mean it in the sense that, yeah, salvation is, Jesus is my personal Lord and Savior, but the personal is always the social.
Exactly.
That's just Trinitarian.
Yes.
And you like it, and to only reflect one side of that is just to not reflect who the Trinity is. It's a different God that is being reflected there. Even if you're reflecting parts of him, you're not reflecting the whole.
Exactly. Yeah, I like the way you put that. If you do not reduce the person to an individual, then it actually does make sense to say the social is the personal.
Yeah.
And the individual is the personal. And there is no personal without both, right? I mean, this is like who we are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you are both the one who makes up one side of a relation, and the relation makes up you. That is Trinity like 101. Like, right? Like the Father is not a Father apart from the Son, but the Father is not the Son. Okay. So whatever that is, if God is infinitely and perfectly personal, that's what persons really are.
Yeah. And if you can't manifest that and incarnate it in America, Canada's just right there. So,
hey, you know what? Here's the thing. I want colder climes. Hey,
if the planet keeps warming, Canada is the second biggest land, and it's going to suddenly melt, and we're going to suddenly go from your like hat to the wealthiest country on the world. So just wait for it, my grandchildren.
I always tell my students I detest the sun, which is weird to them. I don't know why. George MacDonald once in one of his stories, he calls the sun, one of his characters calls it the death lamp. And I was like, that is definitely my vibe right there.
You hate the sun?
I hate the sun. What's the point?
It's that not merely that you see it, but that by it you see all. Well, I guess the moon actually. I actually think a lot about the moon as the sun, Jesus. I mean, which is ironic, but it's because it's reflecting.
I know
the sun to us. Yeah. It's just such a. I mean, I don't think I'm like inventing that. Obviously, it's such a cosmological thing to me that I'm like, yeah, it's of course.
The moon is the number one luminary. I think that's one thing we can agree on here.
There we go.
But no, that's no. I would love to move north someday for a lot of reasons.
So, I mean, we've talked about a lot, and I don't want to keep you here forever. But we've circled a lot. I think we narrowed some of that social, personal stuff. But the last, I mean, but seriously, what do we actually do, Jordan? What do we do? What's the task and calling of the theologian in America in 2025? Because I mean, I think there's some theory here, but I still just raise up my hands and I'm going to go home and I'm going to watch Colbert and then I'm going to cry. And I just
because he's going away in May. You know.
Oh no.
I mean, I'm as interested in your answer to that as anything. That's probably why I came on here, because I thought I was going to learn something. But no, I mean, look,
it's a secret gnosis. You got to pay a certain amount.
I see. Yeah.
I mean,
look, there's all hands on deck. I mean, there's a million things to do, but I'll just list a few that come to mind. I think it's odd. I didn't expect this, and again, I'm not an elitist on this, but I do think it's become more important than I ever thought it would be. You know, there's something about going through, I was blessed and privileged to receive good educations at various places. I think everybody should get that opportunity. Okay. So I'm not trying to close that off, but one thing that I see more than ever is a need for I don't know how to put it except like the actual the ability to research and vet and understand the difference between a source that's good and bad, to understand assumptions, to understand how to read things in a careful, nuanced way. Like all the things that used to be just sort of things, selling points, like, oh, we teach critical skills here at this university or whatever. It's like, okay, like these are job transfer skills sort of thing. I think they've become ethical now. Like we're in like a post-truth, whatever. It's all unreality, AI. What's happening? Nobody knows the truth anymore. That's a terrible place for a society to be, precisely because you're most open to fascism. If there's no reason to believe this guy or that guy or whatever, you basically just choose on voluntaristic, like just by will, whatever. I don't know. I like that story. I'm going with that. And I like what that person's promising my group. I'm going to go with them, right? And there's no sense of like having to vet through. And so one thing, honestly, this has oddly become like a commitment in my even day-to-day life and conversations with people. If someone makes a claim, you got to be prudent or whatever, but like I have more than once have to say like, okay, well, where are you getting that? Like I'd like to know where that comes from, and like, what's your source there? What do you say about this? Like, like that process, which used to be kind of more nitpicky, nerdy type thing, has now become like vital.
It's like it's a duty.
It's a responsibility. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess I think a lot of people would say the role of the theologian, the pastor, is to point us to the ought. But I think to some extent, it now in a world where what is and what really is, like what's going on, is so in jeopardy and in up for debate, our job is also to remind people of what actually is.
Yep.
And in doing that, seeing the ought and the is together, we can maybe bring them closer together. And I mean, that's basically the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of earth. And I think maybe in the dialectical way in which we've been saying none of these things work on their own, we are, as theologians and pastors and Christians, called to constantly point back to what ought to be, but to never forget what actually is, to not pretend it's unimportant, and to not do our due diligence to accurately describe it, because this will be sacrificed if you give up this as well. And I think you can't have an unhealthy vision of now and not have that impact your not yet. And I think the same. I think they need to have these two together, and we need to describe both, and we need to bring them closer together through the whole thing. And if any piece of that is missing, we're missing something. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, just as an example, it's like, look, so it reframes the urgency and the character of telling the truth, and not just telling your truth or a truth you perceive, telling a truth that you've done your due diligence and investigating, and if there's contrary evidence or contrary arguments against it, being willing to revise it. I mean, to me, it's funny because it all sounds like very like kind of in a way basic, like it used to be more of an assumed thing or an assumed desirable, but now I feel like we have to reassert that all the more. So for example, it's like, look, I've got people in my extended family that really like RFK Jr. Well, it's a problem when an RFK Jr. lies about Dr. Paul Offit and says that he voted for a vaccine that he himself created when he's on this panel, when the truth is he actually created the vaccine 3 years after he was on the panel. He ceased to be that. He didn't even vote on it. That never happened. Why does that matter now? It's not because, look, the Democrats scored points on the Republicans. No, I don't care about that. Because I can also tell the truth about the way Biden enabled Israel. And whose points are that? It's not points anymore, guys. Who's in the Epstein files? That's not a point thing. This is a human thing. This is for me a faith thing. Like, it's because I believe in God that I want to tell the truth about this stuff. Period. I don't care who is in the files. Make them all face justice. I don't care that it was Biden who was presiding for 18 months over what's been done in Gaza. He's to blame, and we should tell the truth about that. I don't care that it's now Trump that trying to make a Riviera out of Gaza. He's to blame for that. I don't care about that. So it's that sense of like telling the truth is a religious duty.
Journalism is a holy
Yes,
vocation these
it really
days.
exactly. It really. I mean, I actually believe that more than ever. It's like the you don't know what you got till it's gone thing. Well, it's gone mostly. So now I'm
Yeah.
valuing it in a new way. Like, let's get this. Like, support that however you can, right? So I do think like that is powerful. I also think that kind of posture in general does resonate with at least some of the younger people that are in despair, because at least it kind of gives a sense of like, okay, at least somebody still believes in something. I mean,
And even if it doesn't work,
right.
even if it doesn't, I mean, I mean, that's why I meant to Jeremiah earlier is even if this, like, even if it doesn't work, we still just have to do it.
You just
Even
do
if it
it.
doesn't feel like, even if we don't see what it's going to do, and even if it doesn't do anything, we still have to do what we're going to do. And if what we're called to do, and if other bricks in the wall don't come alongside us, there won't be a wall, but we still need to be the bricks, right?
Right.
Like we
Right.
still need to be, I still need to be the brick that I was called to be, even if the wall never comes together. That's my
Yeah.
job.
Yep.
And I really want to pick up the brick and throw it, but no, that's just pave it. But also, yeah, I don't know. It's, I got lost in the metaphor there, but I think you're right. The truth telling is essential, even if no one's listening.
Right.
And I kind of like that a little bit because it feels a little prophetic-y.
Yeah.
But
Right. Yeah.
I think that the true calling of the prophet becomes very unsexy very quickly, and
Right.
just is a crap job very quickly. So I hope it doesn't be, become that. I really hope it doesn't. I hope rational conversation begins again very
Yeah,
soon.
and that's like that is there's like this there's this weird thing where I'm like being prophetic. Like the bar has never been lower. It doesn't take much. It
Yeah.
doesn't take much. Like caring.
Vaccines work.
Yeah, vaccines work. Like genocide is actually a bad thing. Again, dispute the facts if you want to dispute the facts, but that I will not dispute. I don't think I'm a hero for this. I don't think I'm particularly edgy for this. I don't think I'm radical. I don't think I'm interesting. I think I'm just sort of being a normie. Like those things are, and I'm being a normie human and a normie Christian. I think like let's just look. I don't like it. I shouldn't be congratulated. It's like I wrote a few pieces on Palestine. I do have personal connections there, and the first piece was mostly about that. The second one was a little bit more like months later. But I was already saying, I think I wrote the first one in like April of 2024, like, and I was sort of coming out saying like, this
Yeah,
has to
before the
stop.
election.
Before the
Yeah.
election, I still am. I think Biden fundamentally betrayed the American people. I think, all that stuff. Like they're all to blame as far as I'm concerned. I have no interest in playing some kind of point game with that. It's not the kind of thing to do that with. And it was amazing. Yeah, I got some blowback and stuff and people criticizing me, but mostly actually I was positive. Mostly people were like, wow, this is great and great. And like one of the things that saddened me about that experience of just writing on a freaking Substack, who reads that? It's just like I didn't do anything noteworthy.
The
That
bar's just that low.
It's that
Yeah.
low. It was that low. And like, okay, I said it earlier than a lot of people in my circles did. That's true. But that I still don't think I deserve some prize for that. And so like that's the funny thing about the like people will treat you like, oh, you're trying to be a prophet, or who are you? You're trying to like make a name, or I don't know what. And I'm like, dude, I think it's sad if you think that's what I just achieved, or even or even looked like that was my ambition. I don't think anything I've done is remarkable in the least. I don't think I've done hardly anything that's noteworthy at all about any of these issues we've been talking about. I don't think doing this is even that noteworthy. And so, but I also feel like I have no
How
choice.
dare you, sir?
Sorry about that, JD. Yeah, sorry about that, John. But it's like, but it really is like, look, but it's exactly because I don't think those things are noteworthy that I think it's all the more ridiculous if we don't do them. It's not much, right?
I think that's very powerfully stated, and I think what it shows is that you're a better person than I am.
Goal
I think,
achieved.
but I think part of what I think part of what leads to despair is expecting that you are going to make the difference and
Yeah.
expecting that, and then when it doesn't happen, you throw up your hands and give up the fight.
Right.
And I think to some extent that's that's what I've been struggling with the last few years is okay, I'm like I'm feeling like I want to give up. And is that because I had unrealistic expectations that I was going to win this fight and
Right.
that this fight was more about me than it actually is? And I still need to keep fighting, but I'm not going to get to carry the flag over the barricade.
Right.
Like, and that sucks balls.
Bad.
I was about to not say it. I was like, I'm not going to say it, but I did anyway. It's, I just, I, and I, and I think, yeah, I think for me, that's where the struggle with despair has come. And it's not from the reality. I think if I was just trusting that God's the one that does this and I just need to shut up and do whatever small thing I need to do, then there's no expectation of glory. And you just do what you're going to do and you do it till you die.
And that's where the words in the Gospels, actually do take on a different meaning for me of like, when Jesus says, he tells the story about this, the servants like doing what there's, or no, he says, you know, it's something to the effect of like the servants basically shouldn't be thanked for doing like what they were supposed to do. Like they're servants, right? There's like a sense of like, you don't get an extra thank you for just doing what you should have done, you know? And I think that kind of,
What do you want, a cookie?
yeah, exactly. Like, what do you want a trophy? All right, here you
Yeah.
go, buddy. Here's a consolation prize. No,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's, but here's what I think is great about that. The optimistic view of that. I mean, I struggle with that too. It isn't that I haven't struggled with that. There's lots of times because also it's just the day to day. It's like I commute into work. You listen to the news, and it's like, geez, I feel like every day is horrible. Everything is horrible. That affects me. It would be a lot easier just to tune out, and like definitely I have wanted to do that many times and not talk about it or not do anything like that. But then this is where I think the potential to do two things at once, which probably is because they're actually intrinsically related, to do things just because you believe that it's good to do them. And to say that is actually also the heart of faith. And when like again, I'm thinking my students or my kids see that, then they see, oh, that's the kind of stuff you're after in this religion thing, right? Like that's it's the stuff that can't be controlled, commodified, and sort of distorted into just an achievable agenda. And in other words, those are like the things that are transcendent. And so in that way, the religious motive comes together with the gospel motive. Like the social motive and the gospel motive are one.
Well, I'm glad we solved it.
Done.
We fixed it. It's all done now. We
I'd like to announce that since we just solved it, I do plan on withdrawing in every way from the world.
History has been completed in us. And well, I think it's interesting that you brought up. I mean, I think there can be healthiness in taking news breaks, social media breaks, but I do think sometimes tuning out reality has been turned into a spiritual virtue. And I mean, I wouldn't say there isn't something there. I mean, the monastics weren't idiots,
Right.
But they weren't just tuning out the world because the monastery was often very embedded in society, and it's much more nuanced than that. And I really hope pastors don't adopt this spirituality that just has nothing to do with reality. Like, yes, the kingdom of heaven is above, but it's also begun here and now. And it's not just, we're not a ghostly realm floating above the physical. It's incarnate.
Yeah. No, there's two like anecdotes that really here's like a beautiful picture of the way different vocations or different members of the body of Christ can help everyone else, and as a whole, we're still engaging the world. One is, I know this sort of no. It was oddly connected with this Orthodox priest who dwells in the wilderness of British Columbia, Canada. And when I say the wilderness, I mean like this guy and his wife in this very small community. They live out there. They do divine liturgy like in the woods, which is wild. He builds this altar out of these like stones, but he has to use a generator to call me, and he'll call me like once or twice a year. He's 77 years old, and his whole thing is like he keeps talking about human resilience in the face of it. He's especially tuned into like climate and nature and environment. And he's like, look, I feel like the earth is trying to tell us something. He's an Orthodox priest. I mean, he's not, but he believes God's in all things. And he's like, I think the earth's trying to tell us something, and we need to prepare. And it's going to be the spiritual tradition, the spiritual riches of Christian tradition, and these traditions that are going to give us the roots to be resilient in the face of what's to come. In other words, in the words of our conversation, to fight against despair. And so he's doing all these things. He's trying to find ways to coordinate. And it's amazing because he's living like an almost hermetic existence, and that's one anecdote. Another one is this vice abbot I know of a Trappist monastery in New York State. They're like they like vows of silence a lot of the times. I mean, it's a very contemplative tradition, but he's also extremely attuned to a society and politics, and he like leads these book discussions and stuff online. I mean, he uses the medium, and so I just think it's these are beautiful ways that people. One thing that's true is that this is a chaotic time, and so much is unpredictable. I mean, as we just literally saw today, and it feels like there's no up or down very often. And it feels like we have no power or nothing we can do. There's basically truth to all that. The one thing, though, that it does free us to do is just try stuff. Just do anything. I mean, it's like
see what sticks.
Just try something. Just don't do absolutely nothing.
Yeah. And I know we're about to sign off, but I asked one of my classes today, I have them do this debate back and forth and they pick sides. And I asked them what if they felt complicit, and I've listed a bunch of global things, and they just said, what can we do about it? Like, we can't fix that. And well, I don't know what we can do about it. As you're saying, like, experiment, try stuff out, but you also don't have to fix the whole thing. You just need do whatever you can. I think I kept getting stalled on the how do I solve this instead of, okay, locally speaking, what can I do like here now?
Yep, exactly.
And like I can do some global things. I can donate some money. I can vote. I can support some, but what can I actually do locally here in my community to love and support people, to inform and educate and, help other people keep going when they just want to give into despair. As you said. And I think the best way to end this is we're kind of having this theoretical conversation. And you might have just heard the phone ring in the background. And then my wife just texted me saying, come home. I need help with kids. And that just tethers us in the way that we've been talking about. Like we have this theoretical discussion. Okay, but now what does it actually mean? And now I'm going to go home and wipe poop. So because it's an earthly faith. And exactly. So I thank you so much for coming on, Jordan. It was lovely to talk to you. I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow on Grail Country because this is unending. So yeah,
it's been a pleasure, man.
The wood Jordaning, it continues.
Yeah, it will never end.